Hey guys, welcome back to Bridging the Gap. I'm your second co-host, Cinnamon, and today we're going to be talking about Squid Game Season 2 for our second ever official episode. I want to give a little disclaimer. There's going to be a lot of heavy spoilers since I'll be going through each episode and just talking about it. And I also wanted to apologize in advance for my voice. I promise this is not how I normally sound, but I do have a little bit of a cough, and I was just so excited I couldn't wait any longer to record this episode. So I hope you're gonna enjoy spending time with me today as I talk. So to give you an overview of what today's episode is gonna look like, our main discussions is gonna be about the episodes kind of in order. We're gonna talk about the new games, maybe what we think about them, and finally some potential theories and maybe a few questions.
Artlist.io.
So to start off with, we have our very first episode, Bread and Lottery. So our main character, Gi-hoon, he turns back sadly at the airport, and after that we see him go on a crazy hunt to find the recruiter. He spends so much money on it too, and so many goons are after him. He's been searching for him for years at this point. And this also lends to the fact that the games happen once a year, since he said it's around this time of year, so if we miss it here, then we're gonna have to wait another year. That's why he puts so much emphasis on his goons who to look for the recruiter. And I mean, after many hours and many days of looking, finally 2 goons found him at the train station, I believe, or the subway station, and they see him slapping another person while they're playing a game, the recruiting game. And so when the 2 goons find him, it turns out that they find him and they follow him instead of waiting for Gi-hoon to come. After that, they end up getting kidnapped and beaten up by the recruiter. I don't know what they were thinking, honestly. This guy is definitely terrifying. At this place where the recruiter kidnapped him, they end up playing a really freaky game of Russian roulette, and unfortunately the head goon dies, and he leaves behind the other one. And he's obviously experienced some mass trauma from this, as anyone would. I mean, that's a crazy situation to find yourself in. So after that, it cuts to Gi-hoon finds him at his house, or like the apartments that he has, because he has a whole apartment building just, I think, dedicated honestly just to learning about the Squid Games and finding out about them. And that's where he finds him standing in front of a calendar, and he was talking, and they play another freaky game of Russian roulette. And I literally wrote down a note here just to talk about this. Gong Yu's acting here was insane. I saw clips and stuff of him and like his face at this shot, and I saw like the images, and you know how his eyes were different? One half of his face would be like pure fear and terror because he knew that there's a high chance that he's going to die. And then it was like the other half of his face with the eyes, it was like it conveyed like cockiness and like a sense of arrogance, like as the recruiter should have, of course. And I think it was so interesting that he's such a talented actor that he was able to convey both of these facial expressions with just one face, and I think that's insane to talk about. On another note, there was also the reintroduction of the hot cop, of course, everyone likes, and it was reintroduced, and it also shows that he's working with a fisherman captain, and he's been trying to find this island that the games have been hosted on for like so long now. I think ever since the fisherman found him, which was I was a little hesitant about the fisherman and cop relationship at the beginning, because I was like, why are you helping this guy so much if you were literally getting nothing out of it? You already saved him once, like his life, and now you want to help him. Like, I don't know, it was a little off to me. Overall, I think that episode 1 was really interesting, and it set a nice precedent for the rest of the series, but I do think it was a little bit slow, and it was a little hard sometimes to pay attention, but there were a good mix of funny scenes along with serious scenes. Like, I think everyone that's watched the show knows about like the actual bread and lottery scene where the recruiter goes around in like the park and he talks to homeless people, and then he has like a major crash out and just starts like stomping on the bread. I think that was a funny scene, but obviously there was the Russian roulette scenes, which was also like genuinely crazy. Red Velvet's Russian roulette was honestly, it was kind of funny seeing those memes afterwards. Overall, I think it was a nice episode. I really liked seeing the recruiter back. I mean, obviously his face card is something, and then there's his acting and his character. Also kind of nice that we got a backstory on him. And I think overall it set a nice precedent for the rest of the series. So yeah. So moving on to episode 2, this episode is called The Halloween Party. Basically, after the recruiter dies, Gi-hun gets like the invite from him, and at the same time, he also meets the hot cop who walks into the crime scene, and obviously he thinks that Gi-hun is the one that killed him, which I guess technically in the game of Russian roulette that's a little ambiguous. But they talk to each other, they confess to each other about what they're doing and stuff, and they enlist goon number 2's help, which is the goon that did not die in the game of Russian roulette that Gong Yu was playing with them. So that's interesting. There's also new character introductions from pretty early on. There's a parallel with, I'm pretty sure her name was Kang Noel. She is guard 11 that we learned later on, and we get player 246's child, the man who was the artist at the amusement park. And I don't know, those parallels were nice because it was seen that guard 11 was also a North Korean, and it just kind of reminded the audiences of Kang Sebyuk from season 1, and it was nice to see that parallel. And we also ended up getting a little bit of the frontman's backstory when the hot cop was talking with his mom and about his situation and like the frontman's wife and everything that they dealt with. So that was interesting. And here we get to the source material, or I guess the title of the actual episode, The Halloween Party. This is where Gi-hun gets taken eventually, and the cops gang that he put together with goon number 2 fails to catch them, no matter how hard they try. So this episode also ends off with the shock that I already spoiled of guard 11 being a guard and not a player, because you think in the situation that she's in that she's like a prime person to get recruited for the game. She was basically living in her car in the same parking lot of the amusement park where she worked at, and her life was just very sad. And there was the whole beautiful drawing that little girl 246's kid gave her, and it was just sweet. And I don't know, she seemed like the perfect person to get recruited for the game, so it was really surprising to see that she ended up being a guard. So I think that this episode was okay. It was also pretty slow, but I think I'm just saying that just because we haven't seen any of the actual games yet. But I think that the first 2 episodes were a little slow. They were interesting because we got backstory, but in a way it kind of did feel like they were just trying to get the backstory out of the way. I did like the introduction of new characters and reintroductions of past characters, and overall it set enough excitement to see where the story is going, but I will admit it was a little slow. Finally, we get to episode 3, with the title of the episode is just 001, or 1. And this is where things really start kicking up. This is where you get the actual, like, the Squid Game title from. You see the games and you see everything all over again. It's like experiencing a massive fever dream for the first time. It's overall really exciting, and you're just wondering what comes next. So the actual games start, and there's a lot of new characters who are introduced. I'll be honest with you guys, I don't remember all the players' numbers and stuff, so I'm just gonna refer to them as like little descriptions. The main characters you need to keep in mind are Thanos, obviously my goat. There's the lady that he tries to flirt with, but she ends up dying pretty soon on, so she's not as relevant, even though I see like a lot of TikTok edits about her. There's Thanos' sidekick. There's the mom and son duo. Very wholesome duo, I might add. Like, I honestly love seeing them on screen. They didn't add much to the plot, really, but I don't know. They were just wholesome, and I really love the mom. There's the pregnant lady and the crypto guy, which you don't realize until later that they have a connection there. But yeah, the pregnant lady and the crypto guy are also 2 essential characters. There's also Gi-hun's marine friend, Jungbae. He's a very sweet character, and I loved getting to know him as the series went on, and he was very sweet. There's also the other marine, and I know these 2 formed like a marine duo, and it was honestly really cute. And of course there was the trans lady. She was honestly freaking cool. Like, she was a badass, and it was really nice to see her and how she progressed. And in the episode itself, there was also an annoying old guy. Like, he was literally just an annoying old guy who every time they voted and stuff, he'd bring up his like huge debt of, I think it was 10 billion. He tried to use that as an excuse to keep going. He was just really annoying. But yeah, and then after that, they reintroduced the game of red light, green light. That's also where the iconic scene comes of Gi-hoon, like, he puts his like arm up to his mouth and he yells like instructions for the rest of them to follow, which they don't listen to him at first, but as soon as they see the first person get shot, that's when they start to take him seriously and actually listen to him. And so it was interesting. And this is also where we see Guard 11 coming out and actually killing people. So that was crazy for sure. And it also set another precedent, because there's one guy who does get shot because the doll catches him, but the trans lady and Gi-hoon, the main character, they come together and try to rescue him and take him like across the finish line. And you think he's safe, but then a guard ends up shooting him again and ultimately killing him. And I think that really set something clear for the other players. Like, this is really a life or death situation. You really can't escape here. Whatever happens here is your fate, and you have to be willing to live with that, or I guess pass away with that. So I think that was a little cruel, but it was obviously pretty much needed to keep the vibes overall going. On the other hand, apart from the games, the hot cop is pulling together a team to infiltrate the island whenever they find it. They did have a tracking device in Gi-hoon's tooth that I remember, but it ended up going offline and they couldn't find it again later. And there was also a vote to keep going or not, and it showed really interesting parallels with season 1, where they had a game, and then after the first game they had to vote to keep going. And that is when Won as the frontman was introduced. When I saw that, I was literally in shock. Like, I guess it made sense, but I don't know, I think 1 is just like a cursed number at this point, because even in the last season, number 1 he just seemed like a sweet old guy, but he ended up being the mastermind behind the games and stuff. And it was like, he really tricked you into feeling bad for him, and then it was like an insane plot twist at the end when it was revealed that he's the one that started these games, and he's pretty much the reason behind the deaths of so many people. The only difference is in season 1, you didn't know who he was. Like, you didn't know he was a bad person. In season 2, you know who the front man is, and you know his face and his backstory and his connection to the cop, and then you see him as Won, and you're like, wow, this is where it's going. And I really liked that. I think it was cool. And you had to keep that in mind, because even though throughout the rest of the episodes that we'll get to, it shows that maybe he changed, because especially with his connection to the pregnant lady, and seeing like how he was and his behavior and how he acted with the rest of them, it seems like he really is a good person. Maybe he's a little off, but he seemed changed. But you have to remember that this man is cruel, and you have to keep that in your mind. And some people were talking about how number 1, or like the front man, saw a connection between the pregnant lady and his pregnant wife, and that's why she was more like seen in a sweeter type of view to him, and that could very much be true. I believe in that. But overall, episode 3, it was interesting. It also introduced a game at the end, which I'll explain when I talk about episode 4. And here, episode 4. This episode 4 the title was 6 Legs, and that's pretty self-explanatory. It was a new game, and I really like seeing new games. I was honestly a little worried we were just going to see the same games from season 1, and that while they were good, some innovation and stuff is also nice to see. And so this new game, it consisted of 5 subcomponents, and you had to basically, your feet were tied at the ankle with, I think it was 5 or 6 other people, and you had to basically get through each of these subcomponents within 5 minutes, so it was pretty stressful. And if you think about it statistically, that's about like a game per minute, so it's pretty interesting. I'm probably going to botch these game names, so I'm really sorry in advance. Basically, it was Dakji, which was the same game that the recruiter would play when he was trying to recruit people. Sorry, I'm trying to read this. I think this is Bisokchigi. This is where you're supposed to knock a stone out that's placed a little bit in front of you. The next one was Gongi, which was a stone game. It's like you throw the stones into the air, you catch it, and then you throw 2 stones in the air and so on. It's like a pattern. And the next one is called Pengichigi, which was a spinning top game. which was interesting. I mean, honestly, it stressed me out because I feel like that was the one where you could spend so much time on. And the last game was Jiggy. It was basically like you had this, I think it was like a doll, not really a doll, like a rag doll kind of. You basically had to throw it in the air and kick it with your foot 5 times. So it seems easy in theory, but you got to remember that it's basically 5 people who, and one person was assigned to each game, and you have to move together as like a unit. And you have a time limit of 5 minutes. That way, even if you do the Jiggy like the very last game, if you don't have enough time to actually make it to the finish line after that, you can still get killed. So obviously the stakes are very high for this one. So with this one, we also see the trans lady, and she makes friends, I guess, with like another shy girl, and their relationship was very sweet. You could tell that the trans lady really looked like she cared for this girl and kind of felt like an older sister to her. This game really showed unity, because every time a group would actually pass through the challenge without getting killed, you would literally see the rest of the audience like jumping up and cheering for them, and it was honestly just so adorable. Like, it was nice to see that much teamwork and effort between people, and I think it was just nice. It was like, even though we're in these like dire circumstances, we still have a sense of humanity, and we still feel happy for people when they make it through. I know in the end you start to lose the meaning of humanity when you see so many people die in front of you and you still want the money, because obviously the more people that die, the more money you get in your cut. But it was really nice to see that in this game, despite all that, people were still cheering for each other and they were happy when people made it out alive. This is also, I believe this is the episode where Guard 11 gets in trouble for making the bodies unharvestable. Because if you see in season 1, what they did was they'd only shoot the players once, so I think a good chunk of them were still alive. Then they would take them to rooms where they would harvest their organs, and I think presumably they'd sell it somewhere, maybe on the black market, because that's just another way of income, I guess. And then they would burn the bodies afterwards. What Guard 11 did, she always made sure each person was dead before she sent them off by shooting them twice, maybe even 3 times, and in vital areas to make sure that the organs couldn't be harvestable. We don't really know why she did this. Maybe there'll be more explanation in season 3, but basically she did that, and she got in trouble with the higher up for it, but she basically said like, frick you. She kind of kept doing what she was doing, even though and as a result of that, she did end up getting ambushed in her room later. But yeah, that's like where this concept was introduced, like 11 making sure that she was killing the people so that their organs couldn't be harvested. Because after you kill someone, your organs are only viable for a short amount of time before you can't sell them anymore or preserve them anymore. So yeah, that little concept was interesting. I'm going to be interested to see where they go with that, because I think that has potential to be like a big part of season 3. On the other hand, like away from this island, the cop's still at it with the rest of his gang and stuff. And they keep looking for the island. Honestly, the cop, other than the first 2 episodes, he didn't really play that big of a role in season 2 as he did season 1. But after that, they find out that they have another vote, and ends up being that the decision is that they stay. So I guess this just proves that in dire situations like this, no matter how much agony and death you've seen, a lot of people will still choose the monetary benefits just purely for their own selfish gain. There's not much we can say there, since we don't know how we'd be in that situation, but I do think that Squid Game was definitely a little bit extreme in showing that aspect. Oh, I forgot to say, during the 6 Legs episode, we also got 2 other really important characters mentioned. It was a hot lady with piercings. I think y'all know who I'm talking about. Her name was Sammy, I believe. And there was also a really shy boy that stood next to her. I don't remember his name, but I believe he was player number 105, but I'm not too sure about that. They're like a little duo. It's like honestly, I know some people saw them like romantically, but I more so saw them as like a cool older sister and like a shy, nerdy kind of younger brother who kind of just listens to what she says. So that was interesting and nice to see, even though you'll see eventually that doesn't last for long. After episode 4, we move on to episode 5. This episode is named One More Game, and that's a pretty good title for this episode. So in this one, we see it's like a little bit of a continuation of the last episode where they're still playing the 6 Legs game. And basically, I think Gi-hoon's team is going at that time. It also pans back to the team earlier with the trans lady, and she's just talking about her life and what she's experienced, and it says that she used to work in the army, but once she came out, obviously she got fired, and she has dreams of going to Thailand because she believes there's a lot of people there who look like her, who understand her, and basically just talking about that. And that's also when the old lady tells her and the rest of their little group that they'd like to, after these games are over, they'd like to go back and meet, maybe have some dinner, have a nice sleepover, and it's just a really wholesome moment. I think this is actually where the pregnant lady and the cryptocurrency guy's relationship gets revealed. It's revealed that he ended up leaving or ghosting her a while ago while she was pregnant, and he's trying to make it up to her, and she's basically saying like, no, you didn't help me when I needed you. I would be a fool to let you back into my life, which honestly, I mean, I get her completely. But yeah, it's like a nice to see, not nice to see, but it's interesting to see that even in this mass chaos of people dying left and right, there's little coincidences like this where the players know each other and they actually have a history with each other. So that's definitely interesting to see. So if you connect back to the other side where there's people still playing the Six Flags game, it shows Gi-hun's team, the main character, in case you guys forget his name. It's Gi-hun's team, and they also show number one, aka the front man, like stalling during the spinning top game. I don't know what he's doing, bruh. It's obvious that he was trying to make it harder for them, but yeah, that honestly stressed me out. And then, yeah, that was interesting. It was also really cute. I saw a lot of edits of the guards, like when one person would fail the game or like part of the game, they would put like an X up with their hands, and when they'd pass, they'd put like an O. And I saw comments of people saying like, oh my god, they look so cute. I'm sure they were smiling under their masks secretly, like whenever someone passed. I don't know, I like seeing that. Like when you're watching such a dark show, because obviously there's people dying literally left and right, and you see edits and comments on social media, it's just sweet to see how people can like find some sort of positivity or something funny in every situation. Because while I did think it was a little funny, I didn't really put together the thought that, oh, maybe they're smiling, maybe they're happy that people are passing. I just wanted to say that it's just interesting, it's cute. Anyways, in this episode, the team also ends up prepping for a night fight, which I don't believe actually happens, but Gi-hun does warn them that a night fight happened last time when they realized that they could just kill people and still get more money. So that was interesting. And it ends with the introduction of another game called Mingle. And so that's kind of how episode 5 ends. Mingle is basically, they stand on like this spinning carousel kind of thing, and it basically plays like a song in the background while the thing spins. Then they'll call out numbers like 3 or 4, and that's how many people you need in your group, and then you have to go run and find a room. That's how the Mingle game works. And anyone who doesn't make it into a room will get killed, or if there's people in rooms with too many people or too less people, they'll get killed. They have eyes and ears everywhere like the guards, so it's really hard to get away from that. Episode 5 was really interesting. I think it was nice to see like the trans lady's backstory. It was nice to see the pregnant lady and the cryptocurrency guy's like relationship. It shows more of previous games and stuff. I haven't really talked about Thanos much, but he's honestly so annoying. But his presence was really funny, and I think it was something that, well, even though he was hella annoying, it was nice to see someone be like kind of funny, kind of like a light, but not really in the series. Like I think these episodes would have been a lot more boring without him. I'll just say that. He was very important. He also is kind of the reason that, remember the hot lady with the piercings, and then the shy boy who was like kind of her younger brother? Not really her younger brother, but you know. He's kind of the reason they end up having a rift, because he ends up taking the brother and running to a room during the Mingle game. But I'll explain more on that later. So that's episode 5. Episode 6 is where they show like the Mingle game. It also shows a really hard and sad and like heartbreaking scene of the mom and son being separated, where two random guys came and stole the son to get him into the room, and the mom gets left behind. Honestly, it was really sad, and I do have a little bit of irritation towards the son, but it's genuinely not his fault. I think people are getting too caught up in the fact that they got separated, that they're not really considering his side. But I mean, if you're literally being dragged away by two buff men when you're not that buff, I mean, there's not much you can do at this point. He was crying, and he obviously felt really bad, and he stuck by his mom's side after that. So I don't really get why a lot of people were hating on him so much. But yeah, that was definitely a really sad scene. Another really sad scene is when there's the shy girl, the shy girl who kind of sees the trans lady as like her older sister. She unfortunately ends up dying, but the crypto guy lives. It's kind of like she shoved her out of the way. He shoved her out of the way and kind of went into the room. But at the same time, if she didn't, then all of them would have been dead because the time limit was running out. And there's no possible way that she would have made it back in time. So that was a really emotional scene where she dies. Because it's also seen in the previous vote that the shy girl was crying and she was saying how she just wanted to live and that she really didn't think it was possible to live while they were playing the games. And to see that kind of character officially dying later, it did definitely hit like an emotional heartstring in your heart while you were watching it, especially because you can see how affected the trans lady is after that. Because in that previous vote, even though they decided otherwise, the trans lady still voted yes to continue the games. So she obviously already felt guilty for that. And then with this girl who's like her younger sister figure dying, it was just a lot of emotion in this because a lot of people died in the Mingle game, that's for sure. And additional to this, Gi-hoon's friend Jungbae, he sees Won's cruelty, like number one, like the front man, when they're in a room but there ends up being one extra person in the room, and instead of shoving him out, which I mean I guess it was hard to do because he was on the other side of the door, but the number one, what he ends up doing instead is killing that man by snapping his neck in half. So that was definitely a little brutal, and I know Jungbae is like a bit shaken up after that. But that was another part of the Mingle game. After this game, the remaining survivors end up voting again, and actually instead of everyone voting to go home, this time it's a tie. And the O's are basically the people who voted to keep continuing the game, and the X's are the people who voted to stop the games. So after they vote and they realize it's a tie, it ends up being that the O's and X's end up like clashing a lot and end up separating in different sides of the room, like where they sleep. So that's like a whole thing. On the outside of this, there's the hot cop. He keeps trying to find this island, and him and like a real group of people, they do infiltrate an island because they see like a blue door, a trap door that they think could possibly lead to the games, and they go, but it ends up being a decoy, and a bomb like kind of like explodes in their faces. So they kind of have to go back to the ship and wait that out. And then sadly at the end, I'm pretty sure this is the end of this episode. It's either the end of episode 6 or the beginning of episode 7. But Thanos ends up starting a fight in the bathroom. Kind of his fault, because he was picking on the crypto guy and saying weird stuff about the pregnant lady who was Crypto's like girlfriend. So obviously crypto guy got pissed off at that. And while they were fighting, crypto guy ends up stabbing Thanos in the neck by a fork. And Thanos ends up dying in the bathroom. So, well, he definitely did deserve to die because he was honestly kind of weird the whole game. Every episode so far. It was seen even from the very first red light, green light game when he pushed the people in front of him so they would die. It was known from the beginning that he was kind of a psychotic character. He was a little bit of comedic relief, but in the end of the day, Thanos and his character was just a bad person, and there's not really any denying that. I think Top played him really well, and I think it was funny. It was honestly funny seeing him. But yeah, that was episode 6, kind of in a nutshell. And it was honestly a really emotional episode, but it sets up really well for episode 7, which is actually the last episode in this season. And it sets it up well. And episode 7, honestly, there's just so many things happening left and right. It keeps you on your toes the whole time. So episode 7's name is Friend or Foe. This is also where it starts with the bathroom fight, the same bathroom fight that Thanos started and then he died in, but Crypto survived. And then this is also, it shows a little bit more of the division between the X's and the O's, aka the people who voted to end the games versus people who voted to keep them going. And it was just showing like a lot of division between them. There's also a scene like immediately after this where it shows the fisherman captain guy who was like going with the cop to like search for like this island. I was already kind of suspicious about him because when you think about it, he saved this guy's life somehow, which means that he found his I'm pretty sure they mentioned this somewhere in the series as to how he finds him, but I think it was either he found him in the ocean or he found him on another island like a little farther away from the island where the games were being held at. And I think it was already a little bit odd that he found him and even despite that already being like a big favor, for the next few years, I think after that, he keeps going with him randomly to like go and find this island that the games are being held at. I think that's already a really big favor to do without being paid, especially. I think that was weird for sure. He's also asking some weird questions to goon number 2 earlier. That's the goon who survived, by the way, from the first episode of the Russian roulette. I think it was weird that he was also asking hyper-specific questions with information that he technically shouldn't have. But my suspicion of this fisherman captain guy was really made completely like concrete when they showed that he was fiddling with the drone, and that when the cop put together like a group of people to help him search, like they're all like ex-military or like ex-marine and stuff. I found it even more suspicious when one of those ex-military people finds him and they try to have a civil conversation, but when the ex-military guy starts like questioning the fisherman guy, he basically he stabs him, I'm pretty sure, and then he throws him overboard, like into the middle of the ocean while there's like a raging storm happening. So if that didn't solidify that he's like a mole or just someone to be wary of, then I don't know what would. I think that was crazy. I think I was honestly expecting that scene, but actually seeing it happen was just like, oh, okay, so he's a little crazy. So that was interesting. I think that was a pivotal scene. I think that's gonna end up setting up more for season 3. It doesn't seem like much now, but I think that will end up playing a bigger role in season 3. After this, it ends up that Gi-hoon and his like little gang, they kind of strategize on like infiltration. They decide that even if the games end, like what can they really do? But if you go and infiltrate the headquarters of like the front man and like the guards, you have a fighting chance to see maybe you can stop them once and for all. Maybe you can find out who's behind this. Just put an end to things before more people have to die than they do. He also brings up like a concept of sacrificing a small amount of people for the greater good, because he's saying when there's going to be a fight today, when it starts, let a few people die, and when the guards come to take charge, they'll steal the guards' rifles by pretending to be dead. When they're pretending to be dead, the guards will come check to make sure they're actually dead before they enter more money into like each person's cuts. When they check, you'll have to stop pretending to be dead, obviously. You'd have to take control of the guard, take their gun, and then shoot them to make sure that they're dead. So this whole concept is when Gi-hoon really emphasized the idea of like small sacrifices are sometimes necessary for the greater good. And this concept, I think it might play a little bit more later on, but yeah. So as he said, the fight does start. There's mass chaos. There's just violence everywhere. Unfortunately, this is where the hot piercing lady dies. The shy boy, I think he's getting way too much hate for this scene. He's a scared little boy. I think that was made very obvious from the start. Maybe not little, but he's definitely a scared guy, and he's kind of a coward. I think that was made pretty clear. And he does, despite this, he does try to help her. He tries to he was like above her when the scene was happening where she was getting killed, and he was a little bit above her. He had a glass bottle in his hand, and he threw it, and he was genuinely trying to help her. He just missed, and unfortunately she gets stabbed to death, and that was just really sad. It was genuinely just sad. I don't know what else to say there. I feel really bad for him that he had to witness that, especially knowing that he could have helped, but yeah, I think he gets a little bit too much hate for that. But yeah, unfortunately she dies, and their plan works. When the guards come to break up the fight and check who was actually dead, Gi-hoon's like gang like infiltrates them, and they end up killing all of the guards except one guard, and they take the guns and they try to recruit as many people as they can to find the front man. So the one guard that they didn't kill, he was also hot. I'm just putting that out there. And they basically they used him to lead their way through like the stairs, like the pretty stair hallways and stuff, like the really creepy ones, and they basically do that. And then the Gi-hoon and his gang go, and when they get to the stairs, they end up getting ambushed by the guards, and the guards just start shooting rapid fire at them, and they have to like duck behind like a little railing thing. And in this situation, what they decide is that Gi-hoon and his friend Jungbae are gonna go ahead, and while they go ahead, they're going to end up like try to get into the frontman's security room, and they're gonna go ahead while the rest of his gang like stay behind and basically just look out for them and just keep the guards away from them. So this is where it's decided where one and the rest stay in that staircase while the guards are shooting at them. While that happens, they have a problem with ammo because they're running low on bullets in the guns that they stole. So number one, aka the front man, he heads up with 2 other people to like the same area that Gi-hoon and Jungbae are going, where the front man is supposed to be, while the people on the stairs are still on the stairs are still running low on ammo. So what they do is they task the Marine guy, like Jungbae, like the other dude that Jungbae is like in a duo with. They task him to go back to the rooms where the rest of the players are like sleeping, like where they're supposed to be sleeping anyways, and get more ammo from the guards that they killed. So he goes to do that, but the problem is once he gets there, I'm pretty sure I heard people say that this was a form of PTSD from when he was in the Marines, and he completely like freaks out, like he has a panic attack and goes and hides in the corner with the ammo, and he like refuses to go out. It's honestly, I understand why people are mad at him for this, because there's other people who are like literally dying up there because he's not getting the ammo in time, but I did feel like bad for him because he's definitely having a panic attack. It could have been PTSD from the military when he was a Marine. And in the 6 Legs episode, I think it was that one or somewhere around there, he does mention that his father made him join the military so he could seem more like a man, and I don't think he ever really wanted to be a Marine. And so when you consider all these things, his PTSD makes perfect sense, and it's kind of the reason why he ended up struggling so much. But because of that, and he was taking so long to get the ammo, the trans lady who was a part of the stair gang, she comes back to get the ammo, and then they can't leave anymore suddenly, because that's when the rest of the guards, a few guards, come into the players' rooms and they just stay there. So there's no possible way for the Marine guy or for the trans lady to sneak out of the room and go to the stairs people. So what happens then? Everyone at the stairs ends up getting shot by the guards because they run out of guns, not guns, but they run out of ammo for their guns and end up getting shot. Even player 246, the guy with the sick kid, the one that worked at the amusement parks, ended up getting shot too. So that was sad. And how this episode ends is that number one shoots the other 2 helpers that came with him, and he ends up putting his frontman disguise like on, and he goes and kind of like mocks Gi-hoon and stuff, like, oh, did you really think that you could possibly take me down? And instead of shooting him, he ends up shooting his friend Jungbae. And that's kind of how it ended. Yeah, it was a massive cliffhanger for sure. It's sad that it ended as a cliffhanger, but at the same time, I think that's a really good way for that to end, because it ends up building a lot of suspense and like hype for the next season. So that was nice. Overall, Squid Games was obviously, this concept in itself was insane, and it's all obviously like really interesting to listen to, but it was overall good. I mean, season 1 is obviously really hard to match up to, just because it literally took the world by storm. It was simply amazing. There's nothing much else you can say about that, and it was just off the levels. It was literally amazing. So obviously, when a show of that kind of caliber comes out with a season 2, it's hard to match up to the previous season's excellence and the standard that they set. So that makes sense. So season 2, it was good. But obviously it didn't contain the same level of excitement or just the same impact that season 1 had, and that's totally okay. Those are 2 different seasons of the same show. They have their own good and bad, so that's okay. One thing I say that did kind of severely lack in season 2 is connection to the characters. In season 1, I don't know if people remember, it was really easy to connect to characters like Ali, who had a family, and Sebyok, who had a younger brother to care for. Even Sungwoo, even though he was kind of a villain character, you can still sympathize with the situation and his mother. And just, there's a lot of characters in season 1 that you just really emotionally connect to, and just didn't have the same effect in season 2. We had some remarkable characters, of course. We had the trans lady. I think she was a really essential part. We had Jungbae, just such a sweetheart. We had the old lady. She was so sweet. She was super sweet to the pregnant lady too. And we did have a lot of good characters, but honestly, none of them really gave the same depth as the season 1 characters did. And this was a major flaw in my opinion, but I can tell that they did try. They definitely did try. But season 1, I'm telling you, it's like I said before, when you set a standard that high, it's hard to top it even with your own show with a season 2. So I think all things considered, they did well. The cliffhanger obviously killed me at the end, and I think it killed everybody watching the show. But again, I do think that it was necessary because it builds up hype for the next season, and I think, but to be honest, how else could you have like really ended it off? I think that was a good way to end it. So that was a nice review and discussion. But now here we can go on to theories, my personal opinion, maybe what else will happen, and what the internet is basically saying about season 3 and stuff, or about what happened in season 2. So the number one theory that I see going around is that player 246, the guy with the sick kid, is not dead, that the guard that shot him is guard 11, and that maybe she'll end up saving him and will end up helping him like escape when they take him to the organ harvesting room. And honestly, this is less of a theory, and it's kind of honestly like I feel like this is definitely going to happen. Because think about it, it's like a number one rule, and especially crazy shows like this, if they don't see a dead body on the screen of the person, then it's pretty highly unlikely that this person actually died. I just don't think that they can give guard 11 and 246 that much screen time, especially to guard 11, and then have their story come out to nothing. Plus, there's one thing between killing people and then one thing between killing a father of a kid who's suffering in a hospital. I know they did kill off Ollie in season 1 without considering the fact that he has a wife and a family and like kids, but I just don't think that they would have built up this much depth around this character and like such a backstory and like the connection between 11 and 246 if they were gonna kill him that easily. And the area that he got shot, either I don't think it was a vital place. I don't think he would have died from that. So let's keep fingers crossed and hope that he didn't die, and that guard 11 will end up helping him somehow, somewhere or the other. So that was obviously a really popular theory. And other thing that I see, it's a little less popular than that, was that it's not going to have a happy ending. Like, no matter what, season 3 is not going to have a happy ending. And I can see how that would work, because when you think about it, it makes sense. This is such a gory show, and honestly, to end it happily would kind of almost do an injustice to the plot and just how meticulously it was built. Like, it was literally built around the whole ideology that the good guys aren't gonna win. Like, I think when you build up a show to that point, it makes sense to give it a sad ending. But I think that would also trigger a lot of like watchers, because they expect, no matter how good of a plot is, people expect it to have a good ending, even if the good ending isn't what's best for the story. That's just what people want. So there's also that part, so that might end up preventing the producers, but I mean, who knows? There's honestly open possibilities for anything. Another theory that I've seen is that while Gi-hoon will succeed in ending the Korean version of the games, he won't succeed in ending international games, if that's a thing. It like promotes the idea of like, you can try to change the world, but you just can't. You can change maybe an aspect of something, but you can't change the whole thing itself. And while that's kind of sad, I mean, it still kind of gives the viewers satisfaction, like, okay, at least he succeeded in this, but it is ultimately like a non-happy ending, since it's talking about like, even though you ended it here, you can't end it on a world basis. So I think that kind of goes with the non-happy ending theory. I believe in that. I think that's possible. I think it's a little kind of a little specific, so I'm not too sure if it's gonna happen for sure, but I think it's a good theory to have for sure. And that also goes with the thing where like there might be an international Squid Game, like an American version where they do like American children's games. I think that's something that people would be interested in seeing, but yeah, that's definitely a theory. Another thing that I see is Gi-hoon becoming the new frontman. I'm not too sure about this one, because his hatred for these games has been so clearly apparent even from the first season, that I just don't think that something like that can happen, at least not him doing that willingly. I don't think that's really realistic. But I will say, I watched a Jimmy Fallon interview that Jimmy Fallon did with the actor to Gi-hoon, and it was like Jimmy Fallon would ask questions and then Gi-hoon's actor would respond with yes or no. Jimmy Fallon, I remember him asking him, does Gi-hun become the new front man? And what does Gi-hun's actor do? He doesn't click yes or no, he clicks both of them at the same time. So I think that honestly had me confused, because I was like, how does that even work? How does it become a yes and a no? So I'm really excited to see where that goes with that, because I don't think he would lie about something like that. I mean, it's like, I don't know. I think it's a really interesting concept. I want to see where they develop that, how they go with it. So I think that's cool. Another thing is that the cop will find out that the fisherman/captain is a mole. I really hope that does happen, because I'm telling you, even from the very first time I saw him in like their backstory, I thought he was weird. Like, I just thought that their relationship didn't really make sense at times. They didn't understand why he was so helpful, because he's literally like I won't say he's like an old man, but he's basically kind of like an old man, and he has a lot better things to do than just entertain this kid. Where if you're really an innocent fisherman, you wouldn't even believe that these islands and these games are real. There's no reason for you to entertain this guy that you found supposedly when he was like half dying. So I hope that the cop finds out that the fisherman guy is a mole, or at least maybe if not a mole, then someone that he definitely can't trust. Another smaller theory that I see is that player 222, the pregnant lady, ends up delivering the baby in that area, and that the old lady's gonna help her. And honestly, I really hope that doesn't happen, just because I can't imagine the amount of suffering that would end up being. Like, the baby having to deal with that, and I don't know what like the players, like, there's a contract where they talk about like all the things and like how the voting system works. I don't know what they say if there's a player that literally gives birth while they're in the game. So I really hope that pregnant lady and the baby stay safe. So I kind of hope she doesn't deliver the baby, but with how things are looking right now, I think that's pretty likely to expect that. It's also kind of likely to expect that player 333, the crypto guy, might end up sacrificing himself for the pregnant lady 222 and her baby, their baby, I guess. Because even I did like their relationship, because I thought it was sweet that he was trying, but at the same time, you can't just forget how he abandoned her for months before that. So I think that's gonna be interesting. It'll be sad if he does sacrifice, but she's already been dealing with this pregnancy for months without him, so I don't think it would make much of a difference on her part, but I think it would leave an emotional struggle there for sure. There's also a lot less realistic theories. Like, some of these are crazy. I mean, it might be possible, but there's theories that Guard 11 and Saebyuk are related somehow because they're both North Korean. I think it's less realistic, just because I don't think that they're related just because they're both North Korean. But I think definitely anything is possible at this point. Like, with this series, that's the beauty of this series. You can never really tell where things are going, and it's nice. I mean, when you're executing that like idea properly, it definitely reaches long places. I mean, obviously, Squid Game Season 1 was like a worldwide sensation. It hit #1 in literally double-digit countries, and it was talked about for literally months during quarantine. Because I remember that's when it first came out. And even Season 2, it made a huge sensation. It was amazing. So I think with that kind of show where anything is possible, maybe Guard 11 and Saebyuk are related, but I'm not really sure. I've also heard another theory that everything on the island will be destroyed via bombs. And while I can see why people would think that, I just think that would be a really unsatisfying way to end a series like this. Like, it's just so special and prominent, and just a special plot and just special things going on, and I feel like that's just a very unspecial way to end the series. But yeah, those are some of the theories. That's some extra notes and stuff. And yeah, I really love Squid Games. I think it's a really innovative series. Whoever thought of the idea, they honestly have my respect, because to put together something this diverse and insane, and had the concept of like playing just games that Koreans have played as children, and having to grow up and play it but with a deadly twist. I don't know who came up with the idea, but I think it was definitely amazing. I'm really glad that I have the privilege to watch something like this, because I know not everyone does, and it was crazy. I think this was such a smart series. Season 2 was obviously very hard to match the sensation that Season 1 was, but I think they did very good considering that. Obviously, there's ups and downs to everything, but I'd say overall season 2 was a success, and I'm honestly looking forward to season 3. Maybe some of these theories will come true. Maybe 246 is alive, maybe Gi-hoon becomes the new front man, and maybe they end up having a really unsatisfying ending and end up exploding the whole island with bombs. I mean, who knows? Like I said before, that's kind of the beauty of Squid Games. You never know what's going to happen next. It really keeps viewers on their toes. And yeah, I'm really grateful that you decided to come this far, because I mean, it's literally like 50 minutes long. I hope you liked this episode, and if you have any ideas for me to do in the future, feel free to drop them down below. Thank you guys so much for listening. I hope I didn't bore you with all my excessive opinions. I hope you guys give Squid Games a watch. It's on Netflix. And yeah, hope to see you guys in a few weeks.
Artlist.io